Hello and welcome to the Believe You Can Be More podcast. Today I'm joined by someone who breaks a world record, thinks that was fun and does it again the next day. It's Tully Kearney. How are you?
I'm alright, thanks. How are you?
I'm alright, thank you. So when you break a world record and then you do it again, how do you do that?
Not really sure, to be honest. I think part of me, I'm just crazy and I'm just willing to do anything to get to what I want to achieve. So I think part of it is just like my determination. Part of it's obviously training.
I mean, who does that? Who breaks it and then, instead of taking the glory for what they've just done, does it again?
Yeah, I don't think there's many of us that do it, to be honest. But it's pretty cool. I like the shock on people's faces.
So, I want to start off unrelated, as I usually do. I want you to create a fantasy band with a guitarist, drummer, lead guitarist and bass player. So the members actually can't be in the same real life band. And you cannot have an additional vocalist. One of your members must sing as well.
Right, we're going to go for Tom Fletcher for the guitarist, because he's also a vocalist from McFly.
She's struggling.
Drummers. Trying to think of drummers like that aren't kind of in the same sort of bands, because I'm assuming Busted doesn't count because they also work with McFly at some point. I don't know many drummers. I honestly don't. I don't know any more drummers.
Right, so we're having a band with no drummer.
Yeah.
Right. Lead guitarist.
Lead guitarist will be Tom Fletcher.
Guitarist then, normal rhythm guitar.
Ed Sheeran. They can play.
All right, so you're going with sort of the acoustic.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'll accept that. Right, and then bass. Who are you going for on bass? Right, you've got no drummer, so you must have a good bass player. She's Googling it. She's definitely Googling cool bass players. Cool bass players.
I don't know.
Sound really good.
Who's the bass player for Rolling Stones? We'll go with that.
You know what? If you're allowed to Google, I'm allowed to Google as well. So the most current one is Robbie Wood.
Okay, we'll go with that.
All right. So great start. We've got her in the first question. Okay, so come on, right. This might be an easier question for you. What is your favourite ice cream flavour?
Mint chocolate chip.
Fair enough. Come on, a song that gets you motivated.
Year 3000. I've got a few, so I had to pick one. It's hard.
Go on. What are the other ones?
Basically all McFly and Busted songs.
I've sort of explained who you are a bit, but who? If I said to you, explain a little bit about yourself, what would you say?
So Paralympic swimmer for GB.
2 world records in 2 days, like. You can't miss that bit out.
Okay. Paralympic gold, silver medalist in Tokyo. 10 times world champion, European champion.
You're forgetting the bit about the MBE, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I have an MBA.
Oh yeah. You know what? How many people would make that the whole personality, and you're sat there. Oh yeah.
I forget about it sometimes. It's still like surreal that I have one. So,
what disability do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
So I was born with mild spastic diplegia cerebral palsy, affecting my legs and my left side's weaker. And then when I was about 16, I was diagnosed with generalized dystonia.
All right. So how does that affect you?
So a CP just basically makes the muscles in my lower body quite tight, and I struggle with like my left side just with weakness and my left hand function. And my dystonia is it's a neurological movement disorder, so it affects causes muscle spasms and contractures.
Okay, so how does that sort of affect your day to day with certain tasks?
So I'm a full-time wheelchair user, and I don't have great use of my left hand, and I don't have full use of my shoulders, so reaching things up high is kind of difficult. My core's pretty weak, so think it makes tasks like a little bit more difficult, but I've just kind of figured out ways how to do stuff over the years.
Yeah. So has your disability sort of changed the way it affects you from when you were younger?
Yeah, so when I first started swimming, it was only really the CP that affected me. It was quite mild, so I used to be able to walk around and use my legs a bit in the pool, and my shoulders weren't affected then. And as I've gotten older, I went through like a 5-year period where my dystonia like rapidly got worse, which is quite common for generalized dystonia when you kind of develop it in like teens. And I think it was about 2016 was when I had like the worst progression, and then that was when I became a full-time wheelchair user instead of part-time.
Yeah, so if there's another young person struggling with the same issues that you're currently struggling with and struggled with in the past, what would you say to them, and what sort of words of advice would you give to them?
I think the biggest thing is to reach out to other people with the same condition. So like if it is something like dystonia, reach out to Dystonia UK. If it's another condition, find the charity that helps support people with that condition.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's difficult because you feel like you're alone. You feel like you're going through this horrible thing. And like for me, having to relearn how to do things again was really difficult. But when I started to reach out to other people and saw that loads of other people go through the same thing, it made it easier. And then you've got like a little support network. But also it'd be so easy to feel sorry for yourself and just sit at home and not do anything, but that honestly makes it worse. Like actually getting out, and even though it's really difficult, and forcing yourself to do things and learning new ways of doing things is the only way that you're actually going to get through it and achieve what you want to achieve.
Like I get that with my cerebral palsy, because I feel like sometimes if I just sit there, then obviously my legs aren't going to get the exercise that they need, and they're going to get tighter, and I'm going to lose some of the ability that I currently have. And then they'll get worse. So I understand what you're saying about that.
Yeah, I think that, especially like something like cerebral palsy, it's the biggest thing that we're always told with physios when we're kids. Like if you don't use it, you lose it, and that is one of the best pieces of advice you can give someone with a neurological condition.
So, was there something else besides the physio that you did that you felt helped you progress?
For me, swimming. I mean, it's always going to be, when you're trying to do an elite sport, it's a really hard balance, because if you do too much, it makes symptoms worse. But just by training, especially having something like cerebral palsy where your muscles are really tight, it really helps. It really helps loosen. And I think the reason that I stayed so mobile for as long as I did is because of all the hours I spent in the pool.
Yeah. So, and also with the swimming, you were saying that with your shoulder, you don't get sort of full range of movement with it. How do you deal with that when you're swimming?
So at first it was really difficult, but over the years I've kind of learned. My swimming stroke's a bit different than it used to be, and that you usually see people swimming. And I think I've just kind of got used to it, but I do have a dodgy shoulder from all of the years of swimming, and because obviously my shoulders don't get a rest. Like, as you all know, like when you've got a lower limb disability, your arms just never get a rest. So just from that and overuse, like my right shoulder isn't brilliant. So one thing I actually have had to learn to the last couple of years is most of my swimming is actually, like most of my training isn't actually done in the pool, it's done on land. So I do frame running, and that's how I get my fitness. So the bulk, like one of the most important parts of my session is actually not in the pool, not shoulder based.
Is the frame running sort of something that you picked up in lockdown when you couldn't swim, or is that something that you were doing beforehand?
So I actually started it in 2018. I met Hannah Dines, who was a paracyclist at university when I went to MMU for like a sports scholarship scheme. And for about a year, she kept trying to get me to try this like really cool sport called frame running. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm a swimmer. Why do I want to do athletics? And I kept saying no to her. And then at the end of 2018, I had bilateral shoulder surgery, so I couldn't swim for 6 months. And that's one thing that definitely helped with my range. But I'm not very good at not exercising. And obviously, like if I can't use my arms, there's not much I can do. So I kind of gave in and was like, fine, I'll come with you and I'll try frame running. And she took me to the local track in Stockport where she used to keep a frame, and introduced me to the wheelchair racing group there. And I just absolutely loved it. It was the first time I've been able to run. And it was just kind of like, I just felt free. It was so cool to actually be able to use my legs, because in the water now, I'm just arms. So she then let me borrow a frame for about 8 months until I got my own made. And yeah, I just kind of fell in love with it. And then we kind of realised when I got to the World Championships that season, we kind of realised, like, I had no idea how my fitness was going to be and how quick I'd be able to swim. But then I went and won all 3 of my races in really good times. So then we were kind of like, hang on, this could actually really help, and this is something we could continue doing. It's something that I've never stopped.
So going back to sort of your swimming, when did you first start swimming?
So first started when I was 8, and kind of like my mum was really overprotective of me, and there weren't really any sports I could do. I've got an older brother, and I always tried to keep up with him and copy him. But I couldn't like play football or do athletics like he did. But he joined a swimming club, and basically the coach one day just asked if I wanted to join in instead of watching. And when I got in the water, my mum very reluctantly said yes, but I just kind of felt free. I realised that I wasn't the disabled kid. I didn't need help, and I could keep up with everyone else. And it just kind of, I merged into that club environment, and I just felt like everyone else.
Yeah.
I did try other sports. I was just terrible at them. I don't know why, but I tried football. I tried golf. I don't know why. I tried like athletics, like throwing, but I'm not very good at letting go of things. So if I'm trying to throw something behind me, it ends up going the opposite way, and then I hit people.
So you mentioned your brother, but also the coach saying she wants to have a go. Do you think that was a massive turning point?
I honestly don't think I would have got into swimming if it wasn't for that. It's not something I'd have thought, oh, let me try this. It was just kind of, that was like my brother's thing. And I kind of got into that mindset of like, oh, I can't do what my brother can do. So I'd have never thought to myself, oh, let me try something.
So going into sort of the competitive swimming, when did it sort of first occur to you that I could take this further?
It was quite a while. I did like the Arena League, like little races when I was 8, and then my first like individual races when I was 9. But I think I got classified when I was 13 for paraswimming. And then 14, I raced in Berlin. And even then, like, I loved racing. I think that's kind of where I got my thrill for racing, is around like 13, 14. So it took me quite a few years to get that kind of competitiveness, because to start with, I didn't really care about being competitive. And now I'm a very competitive person.
So was Berlin your first sort of like competition?
That was my first like international competition on GB, yeah.
How did it go? Like,
it was a good learning curve. When I was younger, I was really fussy with food, and I was already underweight. So, like, going away and having like really weird, like, we had to stay at the pool all day, and they get the food options were at the pool. And I'm not lying, it was literally this pink slop, like it was this liquidy thing that was pink. That was like, I don't even know what it was. That was like lunch, and I just like. So it was like a learning curve. So I really didn't eat much. I didn't take any snacks with me, because obviously it was like the newest, like there was a 13-year-old and me who was just turned 14. Didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't really know what to pack. It was my first time wearing a racing suit. Like, I was just having the best time, but my recovery strategies and race strategies were awful.
So do you think it was more preparation and things like that helped you with, rather than the physical swimming side?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest learning curve from that was being around the like experienced athletes and learning from them, seeing what they were doing. And I think that's really important for a young athlete, is just seeing what is required to be at that level.
So after you've done all that, and then you realise that you've made a few mistakes, not necessarily in the pool, but did you sort of change the way that you did things?
Yeah, especially like from competitions and camps and stuff, like they're quite good at, we had loads of workshops kind of teaching you how to do things and the right ways, and then I slowly built up and made sure that the stuff outside of the pool didn't affect the racing.
Yes. What was the next step up for you after the Berlin competition?
So the next big one would have been 2013. I went to my first World Championships that were in Montreal. That was a crazy experience, and that's probably going to be one of my favourite worlds because it was in an outdoor pool, but because of the rules, we're not allowed to race outdoors. So there was like a tent covering it. However, they didn't think about the fact that in the summer in Montreal, sometimes there's storms and the training pool was still outdoors and all of our athlete areas were outdoors and under metal tents. So like all our team areas. So when there was a thunderstorm, we all had to like evacuate because there was nowhere safe for us to stand under.
Who organised it?
I guess the IPC. No. But yeah, it was. But it was.
Sure, it weren't my dad organising or trying to organise it and just coming up with these stupid ways to get around the rules.
I mean, I don't think they're allowed unless it's like a short course championships. I don't think they're allowed to do like have one under a tent anymore.
Probably because of that event that it just went on.
But we got such great suntans. It was amazing. Yeah, the only thing that was bad was they had like stands. So they had one stand for like spectators one side, and it probably only held a couple of hundred people. It wasn't big. And then the other side was for like all the biomechanics and like our team staff. But the tent didn't cover like the side. So every time you breathed, you get blinded by the sun because the sun was like coming in sideways.
Again, that is just like the worst idea I've ever heard.
And there wasn't anything to follow for backstroke. Like there was no poles like over the lanes for like for backstroke for you to actually follow. So people were like weaving because they had nothing to swim in a straight line.
So your first international one was at Berlin. So what was your first sort of like senior international?
So senior would have been the Worlds in 2013.
Yeah.
And then 2014 wasn't a great season for me. I got a virus and then there weren't any medical appeals that year, so I missed out on Europeans. But I went to Welsh Nationals instead, and that was really cool. And then 2015 we had Worlds in Glasgow, which was it's so much easier when you've got a Worlds in like your own country because you don't have to worry about like flying, and you can just take so much more stuff.
When you sort of made your first senior appearance, how did you feel?
It hadn't sunk in yet. I was still like a immature teenager. I was just like that annoying kid that was like running around, like annoying all the older ones. Like, yeah, I still hadn't sunk in that I was at a World Championships. Like, it was just kind of surreal.
And what are you doing running around the pool like?
Yeah, I was literally just causing mayhem, and I was more interested about swapping kit with other people rather than the racing.
When did it first sink in that you'd made a senior international appearance? Once you got past asking literally everyone that'll listen to you for their swim cap.
To be honest, I don't think it wasn't that me. I think it was 2015 at my second Worlds. I think I was just too immature at the first one. I think I was about 16. I think I was just too immature for it to sink in. Like I just.
So how does that senior camp differ from sort of from your age group camp?
I think like when you're like with the under 18s and the like when everyone's new, everyone's kind of the same thing. Like we don't really know what we're doing and we're just kind of running around crazily and just being immature idiots. But when you go to a senior team, you've got people there that have been to like 4, 5, 6 Paralympic games, and it's just like. It's kind of weird because you kind of like it splits in two. Like you've got the guys that are like really focused, they're focused on the medals, they're doing everything they can, everything right. And then you've got the younger ones that we're just looking at them like, oh my God, like this is crazy. But I think it's quite a big turning point because you kind of look at like, oh, well, actually, if I want to be like them and go to Paralympics, win medals, this is what I need to do. But no, it's definitely a different atmosphere. Like everyone's calmer and like, but it's. Like the focus is different. Like it was just kind of, I don't know. I think that's what's so important for young athletes to like get on senior teams to just like it's a very different experience. But I think it's a really important experience.
Yeah. When you got to Paralympics 2020, if I'm correct in saying that, you missed 2016, and this was your first one.
Yeah.
So when you realised that you sort of got to the Paralympics. And you looked back on your whole career, did you sort of appreciate it a lot more?
I did after the races. Before the races, I was just in panic mode, to be honest. And I was going into it with quite a bad injury, and I just had no idea. Yeah. I hadn't swum a 200 metres in about 18 months, and I had no idea.
Wasn't that the one where you got the first world record on?
No, not in Tokyo. It was at
No.
Worlds last year that I got the world record. But I think for me, over the years I've kind of developed, like, I used to struggle with racing and getting anxious, but I'm now like, as soon as I get behind the blocks, like ready to race, like a switch flips and I get into automatic race mode, which is great. It's amazing. It means that I can race through pretty much anything. But when you're not fully fit and you've got an injury, and you know that when you've got a long distance like a 200 freestyle, and you know that if you go out too quick, you're going to die, not very helpful, because exactly what I did in the final was I went out so quick that I broke my first world record to feet on 100 meters. And then obviously, with cerebral palsy, like getting over a tumble turn, like it's so much slower than it is to hand. So it was like a really, really quick time. And then I completely died and got touched out. So like it was, but like before that, I was just kind of panicking. But then as soon as I got one race out of the way and I had a medal, obviously not what I wanted, but I was so determined to like get gold the next day. But then after that, I was just kind of thinking back to the time where I didn't swim for 2 years when my dystonia got worse. I thought I'd never swim again.
Yeah.
And I felt like really down at that point and thought that I'd like let everyone down that had helped me. But after winning 2 medals in Tokyo, I was like, well, actually, this was like the best way to say thanks to everyone that's helped me.
Did you sort of go and see that original coach that sort of invited you to go and swim with your medals?
Yeah, so I did that last year, and I went during one of the training sessions and like spoke to the kids, like the effort, like it was really nice to like the 8, 9, 10-year-olds, like literally where I started, and said, well, I started here at this pool with this coach and this is where I got to. So that was...
What, does he still work at the same place?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's still there.
So are those people that you were talking to, are they able-bodied or are they disabled?
Able-bodied. Yeah. They haven't got any. I think I was their one and only ever para swimmer.
So did it sort of make them look and think that no matter what they're facing, they can always get through it?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that's what they thought. Yeah.
So with the Paralympics being like postponed for like another year because of COVID, did that help, or was that sort of a hindrance?
I think obviously for me, I know some people said it really helped, some people it was a hindrance. I think for me it was kind of indifferent. But I do think mental health wise that I needed that break. I actually think it was a good thing, although I did, because I was shielding, I think I got to like week 14 and I had my frame on a treadmill. I was swimming in a freezing cold, temporary above ground pool, like in the garden. And I just got to the point where I was like, I'm so done with this treadmill now. I just want to go and run outside.
Didn't you have the frame runner propped up on some books?
Yeah. So I have the tallest frame runner on the shortest settings, but because of that, like I had all the poles chopped shorter because I'd never needed before to use it on a treadmill. But it meant that I couldn't make it any taller, and obviously everything was closed, so I couldn't buy taller poles. And the treadmill's 20 centimeters off the floor, so it was too short. So then, like obviously not being able to go and get anything built or anything welded to like make it safe, we just had to raid my mum's book cupboard, and we just prop books under and then use some belts to strap it to the frame of the treadmill so it didn't just fly off.
What was it like? Mum, do you read this book? That's a shame because I need...
Yeah, it was like all our uni books and like DIY books. I was like, yeah, you're not going to use that, you're not going to use this one, let's just do that.
Going back to the Paralympics, what was the event village and the atmosphere like? And was there anybody that came up to you begging you for your swimming cap?
To be honest, I think because we were so worried, like with the Japanese rules of isolation, we had like this app on our phone that was literally like a GPS. So if someone had COVID, like they knew exactly where they'd been and who had been around them. So if you were a close contact, and the close contact system in Japan was very different to the UK. It was like much more stringent. So if you were a close contact, you were whisked away, like taken out of the village and put into like a holding room, like where you'd have a nurse or a doctor looking after you. So I was like none of us wanted to do that. So we were literally staying away from everyone. So like I didn't swap caps with anyone because I was like, I don't want to get close enough to swap kit with anyone. Like I was just going around like pretty much on my own. And one of the guys that I trained with the wheelchair race in Stockport, he went for athletics. So it was basically, he was the only person that I was like a close contact with, because I was like, I don't want to be close around anyone else because in case they've got COVID. So like the food hall, I'd get my food, but I would literally find like there was thousands of rows of tables and I'd find the furthest one. So like people are lazy and don't want to walk that far, so that no one would sit near me. But a village is so like big that if you've got a low limb impairment, that most people like hire or buy like a scooter, because like even if you
like
can
a
walk,
mobility scooter?
yeah, so like even if you can walk, you wouldn't be able to get around the village. Like you just get so tired that you just be like really tired for your races. So it's like counterproductive. So it is better to get like some sort of aid. Or although they did actually have like little like shuttle bus things that drive around the village. It was really cool.
So what were your goals going into the Paralympics?
One was like to.
I'm guessing it wasn't to get 2 world records.
No, to actually race. To be able to swim the 20-point relay, because we don't have many low classification swimmers, so there's loads of kids at home that, because there's not many of us, like they wouldn't potentially see us, like, and I think it's really important for everyone to be able to see someone like them to know that they can do it, because if you imagine how many kids have severe cerebral palsy or other conditions that would think, oh well, swimming's not for me because I'm too disabled, because they don't see people like me very often. So for me, like being able to do a 20-point relay, which basically everyone's classification has to add up to 20 points. So it's all the lower classification severe disabilities. And it was a really good way to showcase to like kids back home that no matter what your condition is, you can still do it if you want to. So that was like one of my biggest things that I really wanted to make sure that I was in. And it was after it was on the second day after my second race. And because my shoulder was not in a good way, we weren't sure if I was going to be able to do it. But I think honestly, like, when going in, I wanted to win. I just, shoulder-wise, I was like, no one knew if I was actually physically going to be able to race because my shoulder was not in a good place at all.
When you're on the start line at the Paralympics, how proud were you to sort of represent GB?
So I don't really think I thought about it until after. And I think one of the weirdest things that, because there wasn't a crowd, it was kind of weird. It didn't feel like a Paralympics. But I did have, on my first race, I could hear someone screaming and I was like, hang on, who's that? And it was Rosie Jones up in the stand. So that helped. But no, I think it was more after I did, like after my first race, my first heat. And I think that's when I felt really proud. And I was like, I'm wearing like Paralympics kit. I've like raced.
And I've kept it. Somebody else hasn't come up and asked me for it.
I honestly, because it was my first games, I don't think I would have swapped anything. I think I was so like, even the stuff I never wore, like the bright orange vest, like I think I would have been like, no, like, yeah. I just wanted to keep it all because it was just so cool. But I think it was really after my first race, like in between, before my final, and I was just like, this is really cool. Like I'm actually at a games, like I raced, like I'm a Paralympian. And I think that was then when I felt like really proud that like I finally achieved what I wanted to.
So when you win the first world record, and apparently that's not good enough for you, so then you go and do it again the next day, how did that feel?
Oh, it honestly was such a relief. Like I was so determined the second day that no one in the world was going to beat me. I was like, I'm not letting anyone beat me. Nothing's happening. Like I'm not going to beat me.
It was a relief. You won the world record the day before that.
I know. That kind of gave me the confidence that if I can do that to feet, then the same race to hand, obviously I can go quick. But it was way quicker than I ever thought. Even my coach. So my coach at the time, I'd been training with him for I think about 7 years, like a long time. And he knew me better than I knew myself. And like before competitions, he'd go to me and be like, I know that you can win, like not to put pressure on you, but I know you can win this. And he'd never tell me, but in his head, he'd write down before a race like a time, and he was always right. That was the one time that he was wrong, that he thought I would go 1:15 and I went a low 1:14. That was like the one time that he was wrong.
So if that's Tully Kearney with a bad shoulder, how fast can you go with a perfect shoulder?
Well, I'm never going to have a perfect shoulder because I've got damage that can't be repaired. Yeah. But so last year at Worlds, so Tokyo was 1:14, I think 1:14.04, I want to say. Last year at Worlds, I went a 1:13, and then 6 weeks later at British Champs, I went 1:11.
So you broke the world record 2 more times after that?
Yeah. But one didn't count because there were no drug testers. The rules for World Para Swimming is that if you break a world record, it doesn't have to be you, but one person at the competition has to be drug tested. and they wouldn't test anyone. So my British and European record is quicker than the world record.
So are you still counting that?
It's my PB. So yeah, like but obviously if I go like a 1:12, it will still be a world record, but I won't be happy because it won't be my PB.
So how would a younger version of yourself look back on you breaking your world record 3 times?
I don't think younger me would ever believe that. I think I'd laugh at you if you told me that. Like, it's just it's crazy, especially like last year at Worlds in Madeira. I had 3 individual races and I broke a world record on all 3 of them. Like, that just doesn't happen. Like, it's just kind of, even now I'm just like, how did I do that? It's mental. And obviously I know how I do it with training and being happy, but it's just like, yeah, it's even now I can't come to terms with it. So like 9-year-old me would definitely not understand that.
So go on then. What are your future goals? How many times are you gonna beat the world record? And if it's anything below 10, if it's in single figures, it's not good enough.
I don't know about how many times I'll break it, but my goal is to never be beaten ever again. Although that's on freestyle, so I've started adding backstroking. And my aim was to try and get a medal event.
How's that with your shoulder, like the backstroke?
Well, when I first tried to add backstroking, our old physio told me I looked like a drowning cat.
That was nice.
So, but I think it looks slightly better now. Like over the years, my range is better, but I still have like T-Rex arms when I'm swimming backstroke. So it still looks, it doesn't look as good as my freestyle.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But it's functionally, I think I'm always going to struggle slightly because I can't. Freestyle is a bit easier, but backstroke, because you're like having to rotate more, I get less. So I'm probably only getting half of the catch compared to everyone else. But surprisingly, I can actually swim it fairly quickly. And I think it's because I used to also be a backstroker when I was younger. So I think like muscle memory helps.
So when you sort of throughout your swimming career, has there ever been one thing throughout the most difficult times that somebody either directly to yourself or on an interview or something that they've said something and it stuck with you and inspired you?
To be honest, my biggest thing was my coach.
Which one? The original one?
Yeah, so the one I had from 2015, Graham Smith, he was the centre coach at the National Performance Centre in Manchester. And he's honestly like changed my career, like and changed me as a person, like really helped with me developing that natural race mode and give me the confidence to know that I can do it.
What sort of things did he say?
It depended what I needed. I think the first thing, so he became my coach just before the Worlds in 2015, and I was feeling like really down, and I didn't actually qualify for the Worlds that year. I was put in for a relay, but it meant I could swim everything. But like I had loads of individual, back then I used to do loads of races when I was still in S9, and I had like 7 individuals and 2 relays, and some of them were on the same day. So some athletes were saying to me, you need to pull out of your like race, your individual, to focus on the relay. And I was like, well, you wouldn't do that, so why do I have to do that? And I was still like, I think I was like maybe 18, so I was still really, like, I always perform well. I was still really good at, like, I could swim multiple times and still swim well, like in the same day. And he just pulled me over and was like, you do realise that if you swim well and do everything like as it should be done, that you could be GB's highest medal earner. And I just looked at him like, what? But he was right.
And then here we are with the world record holder about 2 or 3 times over.
Well, that was the first time I became a world champion. I was 4 times world champion. I got 6 medals at that world champs. And just then, like, he just knows what to say to me. But I had all the trust in him that even when I was struggling shoulder-wise and couldn't train much, I knew that he knew what to do to get me fit quickly. Like, even if we only had a few weeks in the water before a competition.
What have you done with all the medals?
So at the minute, I've still got my Paralympic medals and my MBE on me in Manchester because so many people asked for them. But generally, like, they're all at my mum's in Birmingham.
What would you say to someone generally who's struggling to find motivation to do anything?
I think it's so easy to think like, oh, I should be doing this and that. But really, it can be something really simple like walking a dog or like walking to a supermarket instead of driving, or like literally it can be something small. You don't have to go out and like exercise for 2 hours or get in a pool and do like 10,000 meters. Like it can literally be as simple as starting small and find something you enjoy. Like if you don't like walking, obviously don't walk, or find a sport club, find something like a social activity, and just do it for fun. Like go out with friends and like play basketball, or it doesn't have to be like a competitive environment. And I think that's what people struggle with. They think, oh, I need to go and do a park run or do like this or that, and you don't. Like even walking for 10 minutes, it's better than nothing, isn't it? And you can slowly build up and get the mental health benefits from that.
Would you say just going out and doing something may open your eyes to something wider and something bigger that you can do?
Yeah, I think like we as humans are our worst. Like we put the limits on ourselves by thinking we can't do stuff, and we're the worst for that. But there are so many things that you could do. And like I'm saying, you don't have to like run a marathon or anything. It can literally be as simple as walking down the street. But obviously there are things out there like couch to 5K and park runs and stuff. If you did want to start running, like to give you that motivation, something to drive towards, there are like a lot of schemes out there that can help. But and I think the biggest thing is just like finding something you actually enjoy doing and do it with friends. Because if you socialise and having fun at the same time, you're going to enjoy it more.
Yeah. So thank you, Tully. It's been great. Listen, to win more world records. Thank you, Tully.